You know, God does exist. And I know that because if he didn't, the universe would not ever see fit to deliver unto me stories this goddamn funny and this apropos. I'm kidding. Whoa! Calm down there. God does have a Twitter, okay? The debate's been settled. Calm down. It's not 2011 YouTube, all right? Tucker Carlson's top writer resigns after secretly posting racist and sexist remarks on online forum. And I know what you're thinking. Tucker Carlson? Associating with racists? I know. Everything I thought I knew about Tucker Carlson has been blown wide open by this story. But no, believe it or not, in spite of Tucker Carlson's evident and long-standing vow to fight racial injustice wherever he finds it, it seems that his top writer, this isn't like some random staffer. Like, I don't think this would be really worthy of a story if just some random dipshit who fetched his coffees turned out to be a pollster, you know? But top writer. Wonder how many of those top mind ideas found their way into Tucker Carlson's scripts. Well, let's investigate the facts of the case. The top writer for Fox News host Tucker Carlson has for years been using a pseudonym to post bigoted remarks in an online forum that is a hotbed for racist, sexist, and other offensive content, CNN Business learned this week. Just this week, the writer, Blake Neff, will refrain from making any comments, responded to a thread started by another user in 2018 with the subject line, "Would you let a jet black Congo N-word," he went for the ER too, whew, powerful, "do LASIK eye surgery on you for 50% off?" Neff wrote, "I wouldn't get LASIK from an Asian for free, so no." The subject line was not censored on the... Thank you, CNN Business, for clarifying. Oh, chat died on my stream. Uh-oh. Here, wait, hold on. We'll fix that. You guys probably broke it with your incessant tomfoolery. There you go. Just for you. Thank you, CNN Business, for pointing out that this far-right, highly racist website did not see so fit as to censor the N-word and its topic title. On June 5th, Neff wrote, "Black dudes staying inside playing Call of Duty is probably one of the biggest factors keeping crime down." On June 24th, Neff commented, "Honestly, given how tired black people always claim to be, maybe the real crisis is their lack of sleep?" I don't even get that one. Is that a thing black people tend to do? They always talk about how they're tired? Is that like a typical... I mean, I've known black people who were at times tired. I don't know if it's like a heavy racial association thing. Oh, they're tired of racism. There we are. Well, well, whatever the case may be. On June 26, Neff wrote, "The only people who care about changing the name of the Washington Redskins are white libs and their university-educated pets." That's a yikesy one right there. Anyway, so he was a respectable member of this online community. There are a couple of things here that I'm going to say, and I'm going to get them out of the way. You're imagining right now, what is this? How old is he? Does anyone remember? Does it say here in the story? Wait, hold on. I want to Google him, but if I do, it'll ruin the joke. It's like 40-something? Well, whatever the case may be, yes, he does look like this. And yes, there are many comments to be made about the comedic value in people like this thinking they're members of the master race. If I recall correctly, the pseudonym that he used in this online site was like some like medieval European king renowned for their wisdom and chastity. So like, yeah, again, like the LARP levels are unimaginable. Like, holy shit, dude. Now, like, you know, listen, I'm no horseshoe theorist, okay? Let's respect this. When people go online and call themselves, like, Vladimir Lenin, they're usually 17-year-old trans girls who spend their time on Twitter making vaporwave, you know, like, art of like, their favorite anime characters and doing fan cams for their favorite streamers, okay? But when people go online as like, ah, yes, I am Charlemagne the 17th. Yes, they're usually like somewhere on Stormfront, like, ah, yes, my genes are pure, that kind of shit. So for credit where credit is due, there is LARPing on both sides, but I really do feel like the LARPing on this end of things is a little bit sadder. Maybe just my personal opinion, my humble opinion, whatever. Anyway, the story continues, and it's pretty much the exact story that you would expect. Neff's worked at Fox for 4 years and was Carlson's top writer. Previously, he was a reporter for the Daily Caller, a conservative news outlet that Carlson co-founded. Damn, these... Isn't it weird how much of an overlap there is between right-leaning news outlets and full-on white supremacists? That's... Wow. Who could have thought? Shocking, I know. So anyway, he's been let go, by which I mean Fox. Oh, Charles the 12th. They even say right here, Charles the 12th. There we go. So that was his. I'm not a history buff, I'm sure maybe Charles the 12th was a cool dude, maybe not. I genuinely have no idea. Now, obviously, he's been let go. And the reason why I actually care to talk about this, in addition to the fact that it is and always will be extremely funny when people who look like that are white supremacists. You guys know that bit from Preacher, the comic series, right? Wait, what was it? Preacher, greatest champ. You know what I'm talking about, right? Greatest champions, white race, worst examples. It's one of the most iconic panels from the entire... Yeah, here we go. If you Google, I misspelled goddamn near every fucking word, and it still knew what I was saying. Our titular hero, Preacher, visits himself a Klan meeting, and here you go. Why is it Wait, he has, a southern accent, right? What is he... Was he from Texas? Why is it the greatest champions of the white race always turn out to be the worst examples of it? You! Where the fuck is your chin? Get it? It's like making fun of his appearance. Normally, I'm not a big fan of making fun of people's appearances, but you have to understand that when you're doing this to people who are literally willing to build on a mountain of blood and bone an empire built around the idea of their ethnic supremacy, I think it's actually okay to make a little bit fun of their appearance. My personal opinion. Maybe that could be my bias. What are you gonna do? Now, this guy, Charles the 12th. I won't use his dead name, Charles the 12th. Charles the 12th was fired from Fox News. And that's really interesting to me because if you recall, apparently this is Charles 12th of Sweden? Imagine naming yourself after a Swedish king. Okay, maybe this is actually pretty fitting. Wait, never mind. Hold on, it's all coming together now. Look. Okay, let's move away from the appearance jokes now. He was looking through old medieval leaders, and he was like, which one of these matches my hairline? Okay. If you recall, just a few days ago, a week ago, Kyle Kulinski was on Twitter, as one off does, and he made the argument that First Amendment protection should be extended to private businesses, which would prevent businesses from being able to fire their employees for the political opinions those employees have. So I'm a pretty big fan of free speech. That sounded insane to me. Literally, I want you contemplate the consequences of that. Businesses can't fire you for political opinions. So at first that starts reasonable, can't fire you for being a Democrat or whatever. And to my knowledge, it's not actually, you can't actually fire somebody for political affiliation. Is that a state by state thing? But there's a difference between political affiliation and political opinion. There's a lot of blurriness there. I think it's a state by state thing there. Yeah. There's a lot of, wiggle room. But man, if you really follow that through to the end, then that guy, our friend Charles the 12th over there, would not have been able to have been fired by Fox News for what he did on that forum, Because what he did on that forum was a clear and free expression of his political opinions on a forum that, had nothing to do with the capacity for him to perform his job at Fox News. And I've thought about it a lot. I mean, I have thought about this for a lot over the past over the past like week or so, and I I want to share, I guess, sort of like an outline that I have in my head, if I may, right now about this. Because hey, let me tell you, I'm very happy Charles the 12th got ousted. Okay, very very happy. Personally, not a fan of a white supremacist writing scripts for the highest rated cable news show television host in human history. Not actually a big fan. And now with him gone, Tucker Carlson's program is free of white supremacy. So that's we've fixed the problem. Um, Kyle Kalinske and some others have made the argument businesses should not be able to fire you for your political opinions, and I disagree. And I want to talk about why very quickly, because I know the arguments for and against this could fill a book. The more I thought about it, the more fractal the arguments and the counter arguments get, and I want to show due respect, I suppose, to the complexity of the conversation by not pretending to have this holistic view on it. But why would somebody want to extend First Amendment protections to private employees? Well, normally the people who do this argue for it from a free speech extremist position. Like, fuck it, you shouldn't face like these consequences. Your life shouldn't be able to be ruined for the legitimate expression of your political beliefs. That's usually the approach that gets taken. That's what Kyle Kalinske does. I know Schuenhead has been sympathetic to this claim as well. Schuenhead is also herself very pro free speech, in that sort of way. And I like free speech a lot too. But I actually think this would damage free speech, not help it. Here's the argument I've made before. Limitations on free speech. I'm sorry, let me back up really quickly. I do not advocate for a change in any way, shape, or form for current First Amendment protections in the United States of America. I don't believe there should be hate speech laws. I don't believe people should be thrown into prison for being Holocaust deniers. I think that the laws we have right now are, for the most part, there's wiggle room, of course, but I think for the most part, they're good and fine and dandy. What I'm talking about right now are the non-legal consequences for free speech, such as being fired from your work. My argument is that there are certain ways in which punishing people for their free speech actually increases the amount and quality of free speech in our society. A good argument for this is TOS restrictions on social media. If you prevent the worst excesses of abuse and harassment, of hateful speech, of what have you, what you do is you allow people who are otherwise targeted by that speech to be able to engage in free speech themselves. No black or trans person is going to be able to meaningfully express themselves and deliver their political agenda on a platform that is overrun with people who would see them hanged. So, and we can see this play out in action because all of these free speech emporium sites are right-wing hellholes, before they invariably die because they don't want to be there anymore, because right-wingers don't like being around other right-wingers. They like being around normal people that they can harass and bully and try to convince before invariably getting banned and sent back to the right-wing pit. So, as we know, in some ways, it's possible for limitations on free speech to actually improve the degree to which people are able to engage in free speech. The greatest example of this is the paradox of tolerance, right? If we allow fascists and Nazis and types like that to engage in speech to the extent that they can lie and manipulate their way into power and then destroy free speech for everyone, we have free speeched ourselves into no free speech. Very unfortunate that. Which doesn't really seem like a very good long-term civilizational plan for preserving freedom of speech. See, I don't like freedom of speech on its own in this abstract, principled way. I like it because it delivers certain results. And if the result of a certain type of free speech is the implementation of certain political values that destroy free speech, then what the fuck is the point? Right? Right? So I'm okay with websites having TOS. I mean, I don't want Nazis running around on Facebook, or at least I don't want them open about it. But then we get back to this question again. Why would somebody want to prevent businesses from being able to fire their employees for their political opinions? Well, in my personal opinion, most of the people who believe that are probably right-wingers who just don't want their forum shitposting to lead to them being fired. That's the difference between me and Nick Fuentes, baby. We're both extremists on opposite sides of the political spectrum. If all of our antics are made known publicly, I get to get a job afterwards. He doesn't. Go me. But leaving aside the people who are just doing this out of self-interest, why would you want businesses to not be able to fire somebody for their political expression outside the workplace? Well, I thought about it. And there are two approaches, a matter of principle and a matter of consequence, if you approach this essentially in a consequentialist or a deontological fashion. But I argue nobody operating from a matter of principle should be advocating for this, because if your belief is fuck it, no institutional consequences for the things that you say, free speech for everyone, free speech extremism, you're inhibiting the free expression of the business owner by preventing them from firing people. And I know that in a leftist space, that sounds outlandish, like, oh, so sorry about the freedom of speech of the business owner. Dude, if you started up like a 3-person business where you just retiled houses with you and 2 other buddies, and then you found out one of your fucking buddies was a Holocaust denier, and you tried to fire them, and that person sued you because you fired them improperly for their expression of their political opinions. Yeah, exactly. Not every interaction between businesses and employees is a completely dichotomous, like one side good, one side bad thing. Personally, I think businesses have every fucking right to fire Holocaust deniers if they don't want to work with Holocaust deniers. In fact, I would argue that if you have a workplace where the business is literally not allowed to fire white supremacists for being white supremacists, and there are black people working at that workplace, that is a hostile work environment. I would say that if you're a minority, being in the presence of somebody who wants you dead, even if they don't say it directly to you in a threatening manner, is itself a hostile work environment that threatens your freedom of speech. What if you found out, what if you're black and you found out one of your coworkers was a Klansman? Well, fuck. Klansmen got a wacky history of doing shit to black folks, especially if they get, confrontational. Well, what do you do then? Before, you could rely institutionally on the business handling things for you as a matter of civil discourse, but now that's an interaction you're forced to keep with you. Yikes. So as a matter of principle, I don't actually think there's a good argument at all for this extending First Amendment protections to the workplace, you can't be fired for your political opinions thing. I don't think as a matter of principle that works at all. It does not work. But as a matter of consequence, what exactly would the consequence be for doing that? Well, my argument is this, essentially. If we're just arguing as a matter of consequence, then the only thing I'm interested in is maximizing the likelihood of my values winning out on top. I really genuinely do not give a single shit about maximizing consequence insofar as what the outcomes desirable for a Nazi would be. I'm not going to think like, well, consequentially, what moral outcomes would best be derived from the interests of a neo-Nazi? No. If we're arguing from consequence, then we're arguing from what I want to do to have the people who I agree with come out on top. And here's my argument. We're winning right now. Civil discourse has tipped towards us in an extraordinarily useful way. And what this allows us to do is weaponize public outrage in such a way as to get people like the aforementioned Charles XII fired. Now imagine if this law was in place now. Fox News wouldn't have fired Charles XII. In fact, they legally wouldn't have been able to. They would have had to throw up their hands. We couldn't have done anything about it. Businesses can get somebody fired no matter what, if they want to. If a business doesn't like the fact that you're black, you're going to find out that every bathroom break you take went 30 seconds over the clock. You're going to find out that every widget you produce is just a little bit below par. If the business really wants to get rid of you, they can get rid of you. Doesn't matter if you're a Nazi or a communist, doesn't matter if you're black or white, doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, doesn't matter if you're pregnant or not. If a business wants to, if they're smart enough, they can remove virtually anyone. So then the question remains, with that in mind, who are the people businesses are most likely to remove absent any external pressure? My argument would be the powerless. That's the reason why we have these protected classes, to prevent businesses from being able to fire people for being black or for, being white for that matter, as a matter of race or gender or what have you. Now, these laws are framed in a race or gender or nationality neutral way, but keep in mind, we know who they're protecting the most. When the Supreme Court says businesses can't fire you for your race, we know that we're trying to keep people from being fired for being black. There wasn't exactly an epidemic of people being fired for being white, but it would go both ways, in the abstract, if it came down to it, as I believe it should. So who would be getting fired whether or not First Amendment protections could be extended to the workplace? Well, my argument would be, if businesses want to fire lefties, they're going to fucking fire lefties anyway. They're going to fire lefties anyway. If a business wants to fire a person who's a union organizer or a socialist or a communist, I don't think that law is going to protect them. But that law would protect people like Charles the 12th, because it would mean that Fox News, who doesn't give a shit that they're hiring white supremacists, would be able to throw their arms up in the air and go, oh, we condemn these values, but we can't possibly fire them, for that would be a violation of their First Amendment rights. That's the difference. We are not in a position right now where people are publicly demanding the removal of people who hold progressive values. In most instances, there are niche cases where that does happen. Sometimes teachers who have been sex workers in the past, or teachers who... This usually happens to left-leaning teachers. And we have our tenure and our own set of rules to deal with that specifically. But in the general employment space, usually when there's public outrage to get somebody fired, it's because that person's a fucking racist. And it is through that public outrage and through our weaponization of that public outrage that we have been successful in keeping these fuckers afraid. In keeping white supremacists and Nazis and fascists and what have you tight-lipped in the workplace to the best of our ability, because institutionally, they may not have any bias in their favor, but in the court of public opinion, which businesses are beholden to, we win out. I'm rambling a little bit here. Is what I'm saying, does that make any sense? In essence, from a consequentialist perspective, I feel as though extending First Amendment protections to the workplace would go a long way towards allowing big businesses to institutionally protect people like white supremacists. However, if we extended these protections to the workplace, I don't think it would meaningfully change the way lefties are treated. Union organizers would still be getting fired. Socialists would still be getting fired. I don't think that it would meaningfully change the interaction. And in essence, because right-leaning people are a threat to the, existential preservation of freedom of speech, preventing people like Charles the 12th from being able to work publicly following their little oopsie forum, outage, is actually a step in favor of freedom of speech, because doing so keeps cultural pressure on people who pose an existential threat to those values as well. I don't want Nazis and fascists and white supremacists taking over the fucking workplace. I don't want that. I don't want to have minority groups living in constant fear because now they can't even defer to the expected civility of a non-hostile workplace to get rid of people who would literally see them dead. For the first time in a long time in this country, culturally speaking, we're starting to win. This feels like surrender? This is victory, friend! And I spit on every leftist who, on the cusp of cultural hegemony, or at least a movement towards cultural hegemony, would look at it and say, what if we made our chances worse? What if we gave far-right people more power to resist cultural shaming? What if we made it so it was virtually guaranteed that tens, if not hundreds of millions of minorities across the country are forced to work alongside people for whom it is illegal to fire them for their bigoted views? In summary, I feel like I should have written this out on a spreadsheet or something. Maybe I will, because I'm very passionate about this argument. Maybe I didn't do the best job expressing it, but maybe I'll revisit it in the future. In summary, as a matter of principle, There is no reason to extend First Amendment protections to businesses because you're interfering with the right to free association for business owners to choose who they fire and who they do not fire. Meaning that, from a matter of principle, this doesn't make sense at all. You have to argue as a matter of consequence. Free speech extremism isn't what's being argued for here. And if we're arguing as a matter of consequence, I believe that a move to prevent businesses from firing people for their political opinions would disproportionately hurt minorities and left leaning people. And because I am a left leaning person, it is in my political interest to oppose that set of decisions. That is my opinion. There you go. It's something we'll probably talk about in the future. It's a super nuanced. What I would love to do is debate it with somebody because then I can narrow my arguments down to whatever specific set of conditions are being discussed at any given point in time. But we'll have to wait on that, I think, because uh, waiting on a few people to pick up the phone, maybe. Thanks.